And I'm going to do a screen share. And let's make sure we have the right thing up. Okay. Screen share. Boop, boop. There we go. All right. You should now be able to see it says the cardiovascular system. Does that show up on your screen?
Yes.
All right. Wonderful. Very good. And then I'm going to leave it like this because y'all said they see it better this way. So during this mod, we're going to talk about a bunch of things. We are first going to talk about the heart, and we're going to talk about its parts and how all of its parts make up how it functions and how it communicates with the rest of the body. And we're also going to talk about the process of the blood flow through the circulatory system. And we're going to talk about how that relates to all rest of our body systems. Okay? And like I said from the beginning, you're going to start seeing a pattern. You're going to start seeing that your body does not work with just one system or another system or two systems that only work together. Everything's working together. And the cardiovascular, and I think I mentioned this before, and the neurological, when you start thinking of them two uh, really play a massive part on everything, but everything's connected. So I sent you the video that I wanted you to watch, um, and that's the crash course. It's excellent. I know Hank talks fast, but he's got 3 different parts for the cardiovascular, and each one of the lectures are amazing. And I'll make sure I post them in Teams as well. Um, so if you haven't watched that, make sure you do so. Okay. Now, of course, there's a bunch on here. You don't have to write everything down that you see here. I'll tell you, write this down. This is important. So basically, our heart, from the time we are about 4.5 weeks old, inside the, I call it the easy bake mama, um, we we get a heartbeat, and from there to the time you die, it doesn't stop beating. It absolutely is the one thing that continuously, nonstop, constantly works. And that's one of the reasons we're going to find out that the heart has a very special kind of muscle that we don't see anywhere else, a muscle cell. We're also going to find out that the heart is so important, it has its own circulatory system. And we're going to talk about that. All right. But what is the heart? And this was your Survey Monkey question. What is the heart? What is its purpose? What's its function? Well, its function, and obviously y'all know this because you have all pretty much got your Survey Monkeys in, is that it is to deliver and move oxygenated and deoxygenated blood back in a process around and around to continuously keep our tissues and our cells and organs, everything with oxygenated blood, right? That's its goal. If you didn't know that, that would be something you'd want to write down, okay? Now we know also, because it was our Survey Monkey question, how many chambers does the heart have? Is it Monday morning? Is everybody going to be quiet? We got 4.
There's
4.
4.
Yay! 4 chambers. All right. And we're going to know, and we are going to learn each of those chambers. Okay. And we're going to talk about what they do and how each one of those play a part in the heart. Okay. Now, there's a big misconception about where exactly our heart lies. A lot of people, think, when we place our hand over our chest to do the national anthem, that it's way over here on the left-hand side. But actually, we know where our sternum is, right? It's actually slightly left of the sternum. So, and it kind of sets at an angle. So, being that it kind of turns at that left angle, remember when we talked respiratory, that's why the left lung was a tiny bit, had less space than the right lung. And that's to compensate for the size of the heart, right? And that's why people, we're going to find out when we talk about disorders, people who do have cardiomegalia. Now, who's going to blow my mind and tell me what megalia is? Nobody? It's Monday, it's too early. It's large, right? It's big. So a big heart, somebody who has a too big of a heart physically, that's going to start interfering with circulation and start interfering with respiration, okay? So keep that word. That word's going to pop back up, okay? We're going to talk about it with disorders and something. We're also, people are kind of, unless I've been, I worked with different transplants teams, zooming hearts and kidneys and bodies back and forth. I've told you all that. And our heart is about, I always tell everybody, if you take your fist and wrap your other hand around it, if you can imagine, it's about this size. Okay, that's the average heart. Now, because of cardiovascular disease and because of underlying health conditions, medical conditions, obesity, our hearts, we find now, post-mortem are getting larger and larger. And it's not necessarily a good thing. We don't want them to physically become larger. We like them to, metaphorically have a big heart, but there is a much needed to know difference. You do not want an enlarged heart, okay? The heart, I want you to write this part down. It has, and that's also, you will find, it'll be very helpful if you write this down because it's one of your Survey Monkey for this week. It has 3 linings, okay? Those linings are the pericardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium, okay? And I know, like I said, that's one of the Survey Monkeys. So our pericardium is the outermost lining and protective layer of the heart. The myo is the middle. And what is myo? Go back to medical terminology. Dust it off. Nobody? Y'all killing me. Myo's muscle, right? So the myocardium is the muscle layer, and it's right there in the middle, okay? And for the heart, it's the thickest part. It's the biggest layer. And when I tell you it really is. It's a big, beefy part of a healthy heart. And then lastly, we have the endocardium, and that's the innermost, very thin, very smooth lining. And we're going to find out later, this lining is very important because it also holds conductivity, little bits of electricity that run through this layer, okay? Does anybody have any questions so far? Are we still awake? Do I need to do roll call? All right, okay. I need to hear, make sure. We're going to keep us going. All right, so let's take a look at these hearts. Here we have somebody who died, who knows? But we do know one thing. When we look at their heart, we can see that it is the red and it is the muscular, and we can see all the look at the vascular aspects of it, and everything looks open. Everything looks like it's completely without blockage. There doesn't seem to be ischemia, right? Everything looks good. Now, what do we see here? Does that even look like a heart? No, this is a heart of what we're seeing more and more in people when we do autopsies. And this is from multiple things. First, I guarantee this person was obese. Second, they had high cholesterol. Third, they had high blood pressure. And fourth, maybe even some diabetes. And fifth, most likely they were a smoker. So these right here, this is setting you up. This is setting you up for a shorter life, a more difficult life because of health and different things like that. So you can see the difference. What would you want, right? It's obvious. Most of our heart, and we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but we still have a little more to go before we fully understand the autonomic nervous system. But what that basically means is, and this is something you should know, we never have to think about making our heart beat. Our heart is just going to beat by itself. That's a good thing, because could you imagine if with everything else you got going on, kids running around the house and school and husbands and girlfriends or whatever, and you're like, every few seconds, beat, beat, beat. And then would you ever sleep? No. So it's really great that it basically knows and it continues. So it is part of the autonomic nervous system, that part that knows its job and does it without you consciously thinking about it. Okay? Now the left and the right side of the heart is separated. And just like our nose has a septum, so does the heart. And our nose is separated by the septum, and so is the heart. Now, if our nose, when we break it, is called a deviated septum, then a heart break should be a deviated or something cardio. I don't know. We could find a term for that, but no, that's not what it is. The right side of the heart, okay, its job, and we're going to really get into detail with this, okay, guys? The right side is basically the side where the blood's coming in. This is short and easy because we're going to get detailed. And it comes in, and it is deoxygenated, meaning that it's used up blood cells that are in need of replacement, like cartridges, right, for their O2, and had the old ones replaced. And that's what we think of when we think of the right side, is everything's coming in deoxygenated, tired, just got off the field, working out, and now it's time for it to go to the lungs. And through the lungs, magic, because we've done the respiratory system. Where does O2 get exchanged? Look, I told y'all this mod, I'm gonna start calling on y'all. Making sure, dusting off your brains, making sure you're still here with me during lecture. Where is O2 exchanged? In the lungs. Silence, crickets. If y'all don't remember, somebody say, I don't remember, Miss Scalf.
We don't remember.
I'm looking through it through my notes. I'm sorry.
It's okay. And then exchange of the ovula, right? The ovula. All right, so it's been a while. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a break with this. So when all of those empty red blood cells, they make it to the lungs and gas exchange happens. Remember the ovuli were the tiny little air sacs? And those tiny little air sacs is where that exchange occurs. So the red blood cells are like, hey, here's a empty uh, cell for you. Now, could you fill this back up with some oxygen? And the heart's like, hey, sure. So it fills it back up, sends it's on its way, and bam, now it enters back into the left side. And then the left side, when we think about it, we think about oxygenated, vitalized, charged up, and ready to go. It is ready to deliver everything to the body. So it's ready to go systemic, right? Through the body. Okay. Now, what I need y'all to do is, how many times have I talked to you about patients right, patients left? I think a couple of times. Now, when you look at this picture, and this is the way that you pass every exam, this is the way that you never make zeros, because I've had it happen so many times. I'll hand out a quiz, and everybody will get every single answer technically correct if the image was flipped. So whenever you get whenever you're looking at a picture of the heart, I want you to, the first thing you do, you see how the heart is right here? Is take your pencil or pen and put an R right here and circle it. Because it is not your right, okay? It's the patient's right. And remember how I told you you could always do that by face the way the patient's facing. So you turn your body the way the patient's facing, and then that is your right as well as the patient's right. So remember that. So if you do have to write something down to this, if you're looking at it, it's not, there's, doesn't mean you're goofy or anything for putting a big R on this side and a L on this side. It actually can sometimes save you and help you remember, because of that opposite when we are looking rather than facing. Does that make sense? These chambers that we're going to kind of get into for the rest of this lecture. Let's talk about them, okay? Our top chambers are our atria, okay? And each side, and you see here on the diagram, each side has their own atria. And then here's that septum I was talking about. Separates them. All right, so now in most medical imaging, you're going to notice that anything that's dealing or pertaining to something that is not oxygenated, something that is deoxygenated, is going to usually be colored in blue. Because what is, if somebody has cyanotic lips, what does that mean?
Misbeating of the heart.
Yeah, well, or just not enough circulation. Yeah, they're not getting enough oxygen. So cyanosis, when we see babies with little blue lips or their tips of their fingers when they're first born, that lets us know that we need to get maybe some additional O2 on them, right? So that's why we think most medical things are done. So deoxygenated, so the right side.
Why are you sticking the gum out of your mouth and putting it back now?
You got to.
Don't throw it away.
You got to
Don't
keep
throw
your.
it away. So why did you take it out of your mouth then?
Hold on a
That's
second.
nasty.
Let me. I don't see who it is. Somebody needs to mute their mic.
If I need someone to call you. All right, just let me know. I'll be...
Natoya, can you mute your mic?
Don't.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, it was muted.
Oh, okay, it was somebody else then. Sorry. I couldn't, the people on the bottom, I can't see whose mics are muted or not. So the right side we think of as deoxygenated. The left side we think of, because it's coming back from the lungs, oxygenated. And that's why we see the red. So first of all, right here, let's talk about this right atrium. This is where all blood enters back into the heart, is right here. So that's something you're going to want to know. That is a vital component of understanding the heart. Whether it's coming from the inferior, that means below, dust these terms off, guys, or the superior, meaning above, vena cava. It doesn't matter which. They're both dumping into the right atrium, okay? From there, it's going to go through a valve, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then it's going to enter into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it's going to make its way to the lungs, and we can imagine the lungs being here, right? And then it's going to have that oxygen start to be replaced. It is going to get our cells back energized, and the red blood cells are going to be ready. They're going to be, and when they come back in here into the left atrium, they are ready to go. They're full of oxygen, and a healthy, good, average person. And from there, they go through another little valve we'll talk about in a minute. There's a couple of valves we're going to talk about. And they enter into the left ventricle. Now, I want you to make a note. The left ventricle is the largest chamber. And the reason behind that is because we call this the workhorse, because it is when our body goes to release all of this oxygenated blood. It has a lot of force behind and squeezing of the left ventricle to make sure that it gets not only to the superior portions of our body, but all the way down to the inferior tippity parts of our toes, correct? So remember those terms, superior and inferior, okay? These are really important terms to dust off and remember. And which chamber is the largest? The left ventricle, okay? Any questions so far? No? Okay, I'm gonna start getting y'all more and more. I'm gonna be asking. You better stay on your game. All right,
I got one.
Okay, please.
I got one. If the left ventricle starts to contract, does the left atrium start to relax?
We're gonna get into that. Now, see, now
Okay.
now you're thinking that's good. I like where you're thinking, but we're gonna get into that because I don't want to confuse anybody just yet. But yes, we're gonna start talking about the heart at work and the heart at rest. And guess what that ties into? Can anybody tell me? Where have you heard me say that? What two numbers in our body show us the heart at rest and the heart at work? Real fast, something easy anybody can do. All you need is a blood pressure cuff. And what is the blood pressure? The two numbers from the blood pressure tell us.
Systolic
Yeah.
and Wait.
Your systolic is your heart at work, and diastolic is your heart at rest. So yeah, you're thinking the right track. I like where your mind's going, but we're not there yet. Okay? So right now we're just kind of going over basic structures. I'm gonna warm you up and get you to that. Okay? So questions about structures. This is where all the deoxygenated enters into this top atrium, to the right ventricle, then through a little valve we'll talk about in a few, and then to our lungs, back in, oxygenated, vitalized, ready to go, to the left atrium, and then here to the large left ventricle. And now it's ready to go. Okay? All right, so this is basically, I'll leave this slide up in case you want to pause it later and tape, but this basically is everything we were talking about. Okay? And this talks to you and gives you everything that I kind of just covered, summarized, about the superior and the inferior vena cava and how they both dump into the right atrium. All right? Once again, this is just another way of going through, because, and we're going to go through this again and again, because it is vital that you understand how the heart's flowing. So remember how I talked to you about the valves? We're gonna start talking about them valves, okay? So when we think of the right atrium, right? That was right here, okay? So it has to go through a little valve, and we call that valve the tricuspid. What is tri the abbreviate or the medical term for? Tri, yes, okay. Tricuspid, because it has a 3 and it kind of goes like, I don't know how to, like this, and it locks itself, it opens and closes, and that valve is called the tricuspid because there are 3 flaps. And then from the tricuspid, it moves into the right ventricle. So this would be the tricuspid, right around this area. And I have a better description. I'll show you exactly how them valves look in just a moment. And then from there, that right ventricle says, okay, now we're ready to move on. We're ready to move on, and we're going to go to our pulmonary. All right. And we think, and I know it says pulmonary artery right here, but I don't want to get anybody confused, because to me, one of the most confusing things because we're going to learn something. Arteries always carry oxygenated blood. Okay. That's fact. Except for right here. So if the body's like, okay, hey, whoever decided to make this, just, they're like, well, let me be complicated, all right? So this is the one place where you're going to see it not oxygenated. And this is the only time. But every other time we talk about an artery, we're going to think oxygenated, okay? So this pulmonary artery, and we call it the semi-pulmonary valve, okay? This valve is what opens and allows the deoxygenated blood to enter in and go towards the lungs, both sides, and get the oxygen, all right? Okay. Now, here, if we was to take a person and be able to look from the top of their head all the way through their body, and we could see inside and cut through everything, this is how our valves would look, okay? That's kind of cool. So here's the right side. So you see the tricuspid with its 3 flaps, okay? And then we see the aortic valve, which we're going to, and the pulmonary valve. And then this one over here on the left side, remember, we're looking in from the top of the heart, like through the atrium, okay? And what do we see right here? We see the mitral. Now, you may hear that valve. Make note of this. If this is tri means what? 3. And there's 2. Does anybody remember what 2 was? Bi. So you may, yes, you might hear this also. The other name for the mitral valve is the bicuspid valve. So why they have to be 2? Why did somebody have to be complicated and, oh, I'm gonna call it the mitral valve? That's just how it is in medicine. Sometimes you got 3 or 4 different names, okay? But you may hear it back and forth. And I've heard a cardiothoracic surgeon one time, and mid conversation, interexchange them, and I was just like, okay. So they it just depends on who you work with, what doctor, what they were familiar, and who taught them. For the most part, most of the time people have a preference. Okay, they'll be the bicuspid or the mitral. I've like I said, I've really seen it both. Okay, so this is kind of, like I said, an inside look all the way down. Now we're gonna go here and we're gonna talk about what I was saying, how that ventricle. All right, we know the left atrium brings in all of the oxygenated blood, remember, because it's coming back from the lungs. And now everything, see the guy with his big muscles and he feels energetic. It's nice, energized, full of oxygen blood. And then the left atrium has a little more muscle than that right atrium because it is getting more oxygen. Okay, then when the blood leaves the left atrium, right, we know now by looking at that picture that it's either going to the bicuspid or mitral valve. Same valve, 2 different names. And then from there, it passes and goes into what I told you, the workhorse. It's the powerhouse. It's the large, muscular, beefy left ventricle, right? And that left ventricle is what is responsible for pumping oxygenated blood throughout the entire body. One more fact. The largest artery, sounds like something I'd put on a bonus question. The largest artery in the body is the aorta, okay? And that's right here. The largest artery in the body is the aorta. And I think that's for my meeting. No, we're good. Let me go back. Okay. So I am going, you won't be able to hear this if I play this. So what I am going to do is I am going to post this to Teams. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to hear how blood sounds on a very amazing stethoscope or device that allows you, and during echoes you can really hear every sound of the heart. There's certain really expensive stethoscopes that allow you to do it too. But what I want you to listen to is I kind of just want you to close your eyes when you listen to this sound, and I want you to listen to, you'll hear the sounds of the blood rushing in. And if you wait, you'll hear a silent pause. You'll hear a swoosh. That's the valves opening. And if you're real cautious, you can hear it. You can hear it, the closing, and then another silence, and then the swoosh. So listen to that. It's, pump, the silence and swoosh, and then pump, and the silence, swoosh. But I want you to listen to that a few times, okay? And I want you to listen for them heart sounds. And we're going to find out that most of our heart sounds should be what we call a lub dub. Lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, okay? And we're also going to find out that when we don't hear the right lub dub and swooshing, right? That could mean sometimes we hear what we call a regurgitation, or like when a baby's kind of spits up when they're newborns, like it bubbles back up, right? That can happen in the heart, all right? And if it's really minor and it's not anything big, maybe the valve's a little loose, or it's not sealing 100%, it's only sealing 98%. That's where we get heart murmurs. And that's what that sound is. So many people have probably been told, oh, you have a minor heart murmur, because it's very, very common. But it's not anything to go, ah! Now, can they get to the point where they are serious? Yeah, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, I'm making sure. So I thought I had a meeting at 11. I don't want to miss my, 1 second, guys. Let me double check here. No, I guess not. No. Okay, we're good. Sorry. All right. And like I said, I'm going to post this. And then the next thing I want to talk to y'all about is this video. Now, I know I've posted several Khan Academy videos. And anytime I post them, I highly suggest that you watch them because they're extremely educational. My son at his high school, they do a lot of Khan Academy, and this one is it's excellent. It will go back basically through everything I just talked about, but it'll go even a little more in depth, and he draws you the pictures and shows you as you're going, something that even if I had the artistic skill, I still don't think it would be as beneficial as the video. So I'm going to post this to teams. Now, before we end, does anyone have any questions? I think I was supposed to get somehow, let me see. I don't remember how. Oh, download. La la. Did it do it? Maybe. I don't know.
I have a question.
Yes,
but
please.
It's not the lecture.
Okay, go ahead. That's fine. This is let me stop recording.